Today I'm going to give you a Photoshop photo manipulation tutorial of this sci-fi scene. Alright, so this time I'm just going to go through the layers. The actual edit took about 10 hours, so going through that video would just take a lot longer to explain every single detail, and maybe some of it's unnecessary. So I'm just going to go through the layers with you to show you exactly what I did. So I started out with a quick sketch, and I started putting elements from different photos into the image to kind of build off the initial idea. And this was just a super quick sketch so I could have kind of the outline of where I wanted to put the mask. Alright, so these two layers are where I initially started. So it's just this side of the helicopter, and I cut it out with the pen tool. So I just select the pen tool and I click and drag till I was able to cut it out perfectly. And I took a lot more time on it to get it perfectly aligned and where I wanted it. And I also I took this area as well, and I right click with the pen tool, make selection 0.5, okay, Control or Command C, and then Control or Command V to copy and paste that selection, and I have this selection. So these are from that helicopter, and I used it for the mask. So with these next layers, I just used a textured brush and painted where I didn't want all these details. So I just continued to build and paint where it came together a little bit better. And then I eventually compiled that into a new layer. Once I got to this point, I just started building more and more, and I just put things into the appropriate position on the layers tab. Here's the background I came up with. I just got it off a stock photography website. It's really perfect. And I did some skewing. So what I did was I took the rectangle and I sampled like this area like this. Then I went to edit and I went to content aware fill. And if it's grayed out, that's because it's in a smart object. So go ahead and rasterize the layer. Edit content aware scale, and you can scale it without it becoming too skewed and distorted, and it's really nice way to scale things. So I went ahead and did that on that image to make it look a little bit more, because it was really skinny. It was a skinny image, so I needed to widen that for the square format. Alright, so I went ahead and took a picture of myself for this image specifically, because I didn't really have anything. So I went ahead and just went into my home studio with some soft boxes with some gel colored on the sides, and then I had this light, and I have two of these, and those were facing a wall to make it more soft, so you can actually see those two lights in my eye. And this was just facing the wall, so facing a white wall will make it super soft. So that's how I did that. So I went ahead and put my head in there. I put some detail on the face mask. And what this is just a picture in a hard light blending mode of a plane and I really like this area. I thought it was cool, so I put that right there and put it into hard light and masked out all the stuff that I did not want. And I just copy and paste on the other side to make it consistent. So I did use this one for a few things. So I used this area right here, and this area for this little I eventually made this into like a little flashlight beams kind of, so I just thought that added a little bit more interest to the mask. All right, so this is just engine parts, and I just masked out areas and went ahead and put that in there. All right, so this one, a different helicopter image, and it's just this part right here, and I cut it out. I took my time with the pen tool, cut it out just like this, except way better. And that's what this part is right here, and I did that to both sides. This was a car part, and I just cut it out and flipped it horizontally and masked out to kind of make it the like chin guard area. All right, so for this image, it was just of a soldier, and I just took the helmet and cut out this section and flipped it horizontally. I just flipped it and masked out the area that was overlapping to make it look like it was coming together. And I selected both layers, Control or Command Alt or Option plus E to merge it into a new layer. And I use that for the top area. All right, so for the chest area, I didn't have like any cool like costume or gear or anything, so I just took an image from another stock photography website, and this is what I got. So it looked kind of funny to me because I'm not built like this. So I went ahead and did some painting to where it didn't look so weird. I guess that's just like a personal thing. It looked kind of funny to me because I'm not used to looking like that. So I went ahead and got rid of that muscle and kind of made it to where it's a little more subtle. And I just painted that with a brush that's a little bit textured. All right, so this effect at the very bottom is from a nebula brush that I made, and I just got some nebula from stock photography, and I made brushes. So these are really, really cool and helpful. On this layer, I went to the FX tab here. I did outer glow, and on outer glow, I went ahead and did a gradient map, or a gradient, and I just went down to the oranges and picked one that looked cool, and I put it into linear dodge add, and I played with the spread and the range to make it look like it does. I wanted to build some interest in the image, so I just put this cool gun in there, kind of make it look like some kind of mechanical spine looking thing. I thought that was pretty cool. I liked it. So, and I just added more interest with this tube, and I'll get into like color grading in a second, but I'm just kind of building right now. And this is not like the order that I went in when I did the actual edit. It was a little bit different, but I'm just trying to show you like how I built it right now. and then I'll get into like all the other stuff. But usually I just put something in there, and I'll usually color grade it right away, and that's kind of my workflow. But right now I'm just putting things in to show you how I built it, just to kind of give you a more focused tutorial. All right, so I wanted to put in a mask because I don't know, I thought it looked cool, and I mean I could have gone without it, but I liked it, so I went with it. So I just painted this in, just real rough, and then I clipped pictures on it to make it look realistic. So I put a picture in there and I just clipped it to my painting, and it became a lot more realistic. And I just copy and pasted this one and flipped it horizontally to make it look like the light is coming in from the sides, which is where it would be coming in. So it made it a lot more realistic. All right, so this is everything that I built onto the image. So I'll start getting into color grading, and I'll show you how I kind of do it, and I'll quickly go through it. So instead of explaining it every single time, I'll show you how I did it one time, and then kind of just quickly click through the color grade to make the video shorter. So I'll just go ahead and go through only color grading right now. I'll start with the helmet. All right, so this is the top part. I initially did the color balance and curves, and that's how I color grade almost every single time, unless, you know, something calls for a different technique, which is rare for me, but it happens sometimes. Like on this one, I needed a hue and saturation adjustment layer below that for a specific reason. So for that reason, it's because this area needed to be lit up a little bit. So on the color balance adjustment layer, I always just go into the midtones to color grade, and I put that down on the blue to make it kind of match the scene more. I always do the highlights and the shadows with curves adjustment layer. So for that, I just take this slider at the very top and go down. So if you go down in the middle, it does this weird thing where it gets really saturated and funny. But if you do it on this side, it looks really nice. And like I said before, this hue and saturation adjustment layer is for just this area that I felt like needed some light. And the way I like to do it is to do the colorize option here and put it into color you want, and you can make it as light or dark as you want to. All right, so I did want some extra texture because it was looking a little flat and it looked like it needed texture. So I just put this camo texture in there, and I put it in soft light blending mode, and it gave it a little bit of extra texture. All right, so the light source was coming in from the left. I just decided that and just kind of went with it. So I put another curves adjustment layer on the very top and brightened it and just painted on the left side there. So just really quickly, I just kind of painted in some extra hair. So basically every single color grade I did was the same. So color balance, just blue. I played with the light on the hue and saturation, and I used curves to darken it, and I use curves to lighten it where it should be lit, like on the sides here, because the mask was I wanted the mask to be like lit inside. So on the edges here, I wanted the edges to be lit on all of this that I was doing as well. And I put some lights in there just for extra effects, and I just painted. So what I did was I pressed L to use the lasso tool, and the lasso tool will select anything. So what I did was I selected like this, and I took my time, then press alter option, and kind of did this where the lasso tool turns into a straight line, and then I just continued to do that, and then I painted. I just tapped it once with a soft brush, and it made this really nice effect. All right, so I really wanted those lights to kind of pop a little bit, so I put another layer in there to kind of build on the effect. And with the same technique where I just did a lasso tool and lassoed it in and painted. So with this one, this is a technique I really like to use. And what it is you right click or you double click the layer and it'll bring up this tab. And normally these are always checked, so I uncheck transparency shapes layer and turn this into color dodge blending mode and paint with white at a very low opacity, and it will give this really cool effect where it looks like it's lit really nicely. And then I just added a screen blending mode layer, and with a soft brush I just painted a big circle to make it look like it's glowing, and put it into, and then I reduced the opacity to lower the effect to make it a little more subtle. Alright, so with this I just painted this in and put it into color dodge and continued to try to build on the effect. So this one's color dodge, this one's screen, and this one is overlay. And I just kind of tried to build the effect around the face where I feel like it should be glowing. And then I put in these flames that I took a picture of and tried to build on that effect as well. And I just pressed Control or Command T and skewed it into position. All right, so that was just a color grade for this tube here. And I already showed you how to color grade, so I won't go through every single color grade. So I'm just gonna go through a few of the color grades for these different aspects, and it's just using the same technique that I showed you before. So I went ahead and painted behind my head because it was kind of looking see-through. So I wanted to kind of make the helmet complete. So before I put my face in there, I did a lot of skin retouching, and I have a skin retouching video on my channel. So if you're interested in how to do that, check that out. And there's free actions for frequency separation, and I'll show you how to local dodge and burn in there as well. And I use both those techniques for this image, so check that out if you're interested. All right, so something that's really important for every single composite that you do is shadows. Shadows play such a huge role in every piece of art, and if there's a light source, there's always a shadow. So for this mask, it was looking a little like just plastered on there. So in order to make it look like it was fitting inside the scene, all you have to do is add a shadow. And how I did it was I just selected an area and put it into multiply blending mode and just painting a shadow with a soft brush where I wanted the shadows. And I just reduced the opacity to where I thought it would look good. And all this is just color grading, and we've gone through that, so I won't go through that again. So I just did with a white brush, soft brush, just 2 dots for the light. And this is color grading for this area. So once you get like shapes in there, all you really have to do is make sure the lighting and the color grade is consistent, and you will have a good composite. So yeah, that's just color grading. So I went ahead and put just painted this in, and I was really careful to kind of have a good shapes in this because I didn't want to be sloppy with it, so I made sure to paint that in really, really nicely. And with this, I use the same technique as these two up here. I double click on the layer, uncheck the transparency shapes, put it into color dodge, and with a low flow brush, make sure it's flow and not opacity, put like at 4. I went ahead and just did dots, and it makes it look like it's glowing really, really nicely. And this is the color grade for this side. And I did the same thing on that side as well. All right, so over top, both those layers, I did the same thing that I did up here, just screen blending mode layer with a soft brush. And I did a dot over top of that, and just to make it look like it's glowing. Let's see. All right, this is the color grade for the chin piece. Okay, so these look too basic, so I wanted to put some texture in there, and just what these are is just this image with some camo design and some cool looking stuff. I just put that in there and put it into hard light blending mode and put a black mask on it by pressing Alter Option plus the mask button. It'll go to black, and black means that there's nothing there. So I painted with white to reveal it, to give this more like a destroyed look to it. That went with the image really well, and I did the same thing on that side. All right, so with glass, there's always reflections. I'm not like super great at drawing reflections, but I wanted to put in this element into the image. So I double clicked the layer, checked off the transparency shapes layer, and I put this one into linear dodge add. And then I just painted white where those highlights I thought that they should be. And I reduced the fill on this one because if you reduce opacity, it does, it makes it look bad. So make sure to use fill on linear dodge or color dodge. These layers are just anamorphic flares that I painted a while back, just on a separate thing with a black background, and I put that into linear dodge add and reduce the fill, and I just did that twice. And for this one I did a linear dodge add, just a soft brush, and painted over that to build the effect. This one's screen to build effect. This one is screen to build more. This is where I dodge and burn. So with dodge and burn, for this image, sometimes it's different for each one, I put the curves adjustment layer into luminosity. So I just go here, curves adjustment layer, luminosity, blending mode, which is right here. And I did this one down, I did that one down, and then I did these two up. And then I just painted with a soft brush white to reveal these effects in the areas that I thought that needed a little dodge and burn. So this is before dodge and burn, and this is after dodge and burn. So it does change it a lot. I think it's important to do that, and I like it. So I do that quite often. So here I begin to color grade a little bit, and I'm trying to experiment with different kinds of color grading. There's all kinds of ways to do color grading. So on this, I did a global color grade. So what that means is I did a color grade across the whole image. So I didn't use these masks at all. So for this color grade, I just went into master and I did -10 +5 saturation and +1 lightness, and what that's gonna give you is a orange and teal look. So there's a bunch of different ways you can achieve that look, but that's the one I tried out this time. Okay, so this is another global color grade, and all these are global. So I didn't go in and color grade each like something individually. It's just over top the whole image. So with this selective color adjustment layer, which is in here, I went to the blues and just kind of made the blues into a color that I liked. And for this selective color adjustment layer, I went into the blacks and kind of made it a small adjustment. So with this gradient map, I just chose these colors and put it into overlay blending mode. And then I wasn't exactly happy with the color grade that I was getting out of all that. So I went ahead and pressed Controller Command Alt Option plus Shift plus E to compile everything that I've done so far into a new layer. So I went ahead and did that, and I color grade even further by going into Camera Raw. And I usually just do it a global color grade here, but I wanted to be able to have the option to kind of do my little micro adjustments. So I kind of wanted to kind of get away from Camera Raw because it's kind of hard to make micro adjustments. But I went ahead and went in here, and these are the things that I did in Camera Raw to make the image pop a bit. So you can just kind of look at that. You can pause it if you want to. I did this, which I love to do. It just masks the picture, and I made sure that this line is a little bit below, just because I like the look. I did do a little bit of luminance, just to kind of bring the noise levels together a little bit before I put more noise on it. Just to kind of make it a little bit more consistent. So I did this with the luminance, which kind of brightens it a bit. And I was having a little bit of trouble with the exposure and the luminance, so I'm gonna have to like go back and fix that a little bit. And I like to put a vignette on there most of the time, unless it looks funny. But yeah, I did that here, and then I did a teal and orange color grade in the calibration tab with these settings. So this was Camera Raw. It always does a really nice change. All right, so this is where I started to have trouble with the colors and the texture. And I had to do a little bit of extra work just because I wasn't really happy with how it was looking. So with the black and white adjustment layer is a really powerful way to do tonal contrast. And tonal contrast is where the tones are contrasting. Instead of the colors, it's the tones. So I like to use black and white adjustment layer. So just go adjustment layer, black and white, and it will turn it into black and white. And you'll have these sliders to change the values of the black and white. And it's really nice for, you know, black and white photography. I've been able to do some really cool portraits with this adjustment layer. It's very powerful. I like it a lot. So change the blending mode to luminosity, and you'll be able to change the luminosity, which is super good and powerful for tonal contrast. So I made sure to usually I like to leave it black and white so I can see the tones instead of the color. and add contrast in the areas that I want the contrast, and then finally turn it into luminosity. And if it looks bad, sometimes, a lot of the time, it will look bad because you were looking at just the tones. You can either reduce the opacity or you can change it a little bit after you put it into luminosity blending mode. So I already did that, so I'll delete that. So this is what I came up with, and I was having a bunch of trouble because it was looking really blotchy, and I have a lot of red in my skin, and it can get really like blotchy looking. And I got a bunch of freckles, so that kind of affects it as well. So I kind of just tried to continue to get the image I was looking for. So I saw that it was really kind of weird dark red in my face, but I didn't want to like mess around with this too much, so I just kept trying to build. So I went into hue and saturation. I went into the reds, reduced it, and press Control or Command I to make the mask black, and painted with white just in the areas where I wanted to reduce the reds. I added one more black and white adjustment layer with the luminosity blending mode to adjust the tones again. And I wanted to continue to build on these effects because they were looking a little dull from all the global color grading and the tonal contrast. So I wanted to add some more glowing screen. So I put it into the screen and just added more. That one's in screen. That one is in color dodge and just skinnier. And I did one more with white in color dodge to kind of make that effect. All right, so I wanted this side more dark because the light source was coming in from this direction. So I just put a curves adjustment layer and I matted it a little bit. So I increased this side, and that will matte it, the picture. And then I just reduced the exposure in the center. All right, I did a quick sharpen. So I like to put everything into a new layer by pressing Control or Command Alt or Option plus Shift plus E, and that will merge everything. And then I'll right click, convert to Smart Object, and then I'll go Filter, Other, High Pass. Then I'll usually do that from either 2 to 4. So I went ahead and did this one at about 2.5. And then I just put that into overlay blending mode, and that sharpened the image. All right, so with this image, I didn't have any depth of field. So everything in the image was sharp. So with these things, sometimes that's really nice, but for this image, I wanted a little bit of blur on the sides. So in order to do that, I put it into a smart object by right clicking, convert to smart object, filter, blur gallery, and then I went to iris blur here. And what this is just a little blur on the outside corners, which made it a little bit more cinematic, I would say. So it wasn't too it wasn't way too sharp, and I just put that at 15 pixels, and it blurred the sides here. It's subtle, but it kind of brings your eyes into the center of the image. All right, so I felt like it was too dark, and I do this a lot of the times where I do all these crazy color grading and it gets super dark. So I like to put an exposure adjustment layer on the very top and double click the layer, and with Alt or Option you can slide these sliders. So I went ahead and slid the white ones to the left to take the effect out of the highlights. So I didn't want the exposure in the highlights, I just wanted exposure in the shadows. So that's what I did to get rid of the exposure in the highlights. And it kind of brought up the shadows a bit. Then I did another black and white adjustment layer for tonal contrast. And that's what I came up with. And like I said before, I was having a lot of trouble with like saturation and the contrast on my face. It was looking funny to me. So I did local dodge and burn on my face because it was looking really blotchy from those specular highlights that I was putting into the mask, and I didn't really like it. So with local dodge and burn, it's just curves adjustment layer, and some are down and some are up. So this is more exposure and this is less exposure, and I have a whole video on that, so check that out if you want to. So I won't go over that. You can get some tips from that other video. And this is the difference. So it's a big difference. All right, so I raised the blacks in the neutral and put some red in the neutral as well to kind of give it a little bit more matte. I used some vibrance. I did highlights. I did a color balance adjustment layer. And I went into the highlight tone and did a yellow and red. And I did the same thing where I double click the layer and I separated these two to take the effect out of the shadows. So I just wanted the yellow. I just wanted this yellow and red in the highlights only. I've been doing this a lot lately, and it makes my composites look a lot more consistent. And it is a little subtle, but I can tell. I can tell in my own art that it makes it more consistent. And what this is just a layer of noise on top of everything. And I think that this is important because everything that you composite is a little bit different in texture. And this way it kind of bring it together a little bit better. So you can see it makes a big change, especially in these things that I paint. So instead of the painted area just being an area with no noise or texture, it gives it a super consistent look, and it makes it a lot better looking in my opinion. And it is subtle, but it makes a big difference in my opinion. So what I do with this is I'll just press Alt Option plus this new layer, and it'll bring up the new layer tab. I'll put this into soft light blending mode, fill with soft light neutral color 50% gray, press OK. And then it'll give you a 50% gray layer with a soft light blending mode. Then just go filter, noise, add noise. I usually do 20 on Gaussian, and it'll give it a really nice noise layer. All right, guys, I hope that you were able to learn a little bit from this. So if you have any comments, leave me a comment in the comment section. If you like my video or you want some free assets in the future, please subscribe to my channel. I very much appreciate that. If you have any art that you want me to see, go ahead and tag me on Instagram at jfarmphoto. I would love to see that, of course. As always, that's all I have for you guys. Have a good one.